Hi, I'm Jenyce, and welcome to Authentic Living, and welcome to my casa. The following interview was really fun to do because I met Kelly Wagner in a group. And have you ever met somebody that just lights up the room with enthusiasm and they're really lit up by their mission? That's how I saw Kelly for the first time. And every time I see her, she's the same way. So, what Kelly does is she helps women go through transformation in an empowered way. She's actually an inspiration curator and a wayfarer. She's amazing. And she's helping a lot of us go through personal development and changes in our life. Whether we can see ourselves in it or not, she will help us through with her program, and she will also help you see who you are and where you're going. Stay tuned as I interview Kelly Wagner. Welcome, Kelly. I'm really excited to talk to you today about transformational empowerment, especially for women. So I cannot wait to hear from you and what you're doing out there in our coaching world. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're going to be sharing with us today?
Yes, and thank you, Dawn, for inviting me. Thank you again for this is so great to have this opportunity to have the conversation because, yeah, what I wanted to share and talk with you about today is transformation because there's so much going on in the world right now. And a lot of people are feeling lost and afraid and worried. And, it really, I think this started before COVID, but COVID certainly like accelerated a lot of things and has accentuated a lot of things. And so, there's transformation happening at a large macro level, like sort of globally, right? And the world is always evolving and changing. Every generation has their thing that they're going through, and we're always evolving. But there's a particular shift right now, I think, that so many people are feeling. Um, and through COVID, that it's kind of started in a beautiful way. Truthfully, in the first early months of COVID, it sort of felt like this sense of unity, like when no one knew what was going on yet. There's this beautiful unity and people talking about, connecting with the things that mattered most. And then as we learn more, then the fear starts and division and like, people, what work is still closed, what's happening. And so that created a lot of unrest in the world, certainly. And then the changing work environments, right? Like people having to switch to these online mediums, which I'm so grateful for. Like it's a wonderful um, technology that we have to be able to connect in this way. And at the same time, there's a disconnect. It's different seeing everyone over screens instead of in person. And that time, kind of globally, it literally was a global thing that's affected not just one country or one culture, but a lot of people, North America, we use the term the great resignation of people really rethinking what they're doing with their lives, with their careers. And so that's translated into all kinds of things that are transforming globally now, right? With the political unrest and war and divisions civilly, within countries as well, along with some other amazing, potentially incredible changes that are also scary. Like, AI is developing so quickly. And so there's kind of that mass level of transformation happening, but it's also at the individual level, very much so, right? The individual always translates to the macro. And so people, I think, are really suffering a lot, with just a lot of confusion, a sense of not direct, no direction, or not really sure what their purpose or their meaning is. And again, before COVID, this was, I think, the case too, and it has been throughout history in different ways. But people kind of going about their lives doing the things that are sequentially that, oh, that's the next thing to do, and I go and I need to get a career that pays well, and so you go do these things. And I think a lot of times we detach from our authentic selves, and I call it, the authentic self and the adapted self. Like we have to figure out how to survive in this world, starting as from little kids. How do I survive in this family? What do I need to do to make mom and dad happy? And it carries on to a certain degree through our lives. And certainly we have more and more autonomy as we get older and are able to make our own choices. And absolutely certain people have more or less opportunity, and so those choices may be more or less difficult depending on the situation. But because of all this transformation, I really think that now more than ever the world really needs us all to create our lives into something that really gives us a sense of fulfillment and contentment, whatever that is. We all need to rise into our authentic, joyful selves. And that's not always easy. In fact, change and transformation is often really hard. Like, even when it's worth doing, doesn't necessarily make it easy if it's something even if it's something you're excited about. So yeah, I wanted to just share some things that I have learned over the years about how to go through and get through times of major change and transformation in a way that makes it a lot less scary, and it just makes it a little bit easier for us to go through those major changes.
I love what you're saying. And there's so much to unpack there because, after all, this podcast is all about authentic living, which is exactly what you're talking about. And so, our authentic self and then our adaptive self, I heard you say.
Yes.
And in my experience in my life, as some of my clients also have told me is true, is that adaptive self um, is the one that is the safety self, the one that teaches us to be safe in our environment, which causes us to have a shadow self. In other words, that authentic self that's been shoved down because it's not safe for it to come out. Am I going down the right path with what you're saying?
I absolutely align with that. That's my perspective as well. That's been my experience, and that's what I see in a lot of other people. Absolutely. And it's all about effectively safety in one way or the other, right? How do I get through this world? It's tricky to be a human, it's there's a lot of challenges that go on. And and that's putting it lightly, without even getting into some of the really, like, horrifically awful and difficult things that a lot of people have to go through.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely, that adapted self. I mean, thank her or him, like, it's wonderful that we have the ability to just do what we need to do to, get through the day, the month, the year. Because that's what keeps us here and keeps us going and keeps us open to the opportunity of, hopefully, realigning to that authentic self that's always in there. She's never lost. She's
Yeah.
always in there somewhere, even if she's buried by layers and layers and layers and layers of, mud and other people's debris and all the rest of it.
I love the way you're saying this. It's a different perspective. It's the same thing in a different perspective, but very adaptable. Like, I understand everything you're saying. I'm feeling it myself, as I'm sure our listeners are as well, Kelly. So my experience with that adaptive self has been, and what I understand from just science and therapists from all over the world, is that child who was our adaptive self, is our adaptive self, had to learn to adapt into our world and hide some of those parts of them and protect those parts of them that didn't fit well in a situation, just to protect themselves. The problem with that is that young age, we don't have anything to compare life to. Everything we're given, we believe to be true. So that is like ingrained in our belief system, in our lives. And when it comes to change, change is scary. Why? Because sometimes change as a child meant danger. And so what you're working on is empowering women specifically during change and transformation in our life. And I'm really excited to hear about some of your experiences and some of the tools that you have for us today.
Yeah. Well, and you know what, you make a really good point of just, how we have to adapt based on the circumstances. I think about that a lot. Like, if you're born in this country versus that country, the different influences, because even it's things that aren't even overtly said to us, or expressed to us as kids. Like, I remember, this is a funny example, but of something relatively inconsequential, but I think it illustrates how, as children, we just are figuring out this world based on what happens around us, regardless of what we're actually said. Like, I remember being, I don't know, super young, like pre-kindergarten or kindergarten age, I want to say. And somehow it came out in conversation. I just believed that men drank Coke and women drank Diet Coke.
Mm.
And it just came out in and I must have said something to, it was my parent or grandparent, I can't remember, about, oh, I have a Diet Coke because that's for girls or something. And because I remember the reaction was like, what? Like, no one had ever obviously told me that. That wasn't like a thing, an instruction for life. But as kids, we literally just we're absorbing everything in our environment. Like, we're so smart as kids because we're just, taking so much in. And a lot of it is unconscious until someone maybe points out to us, oh, I've never thought of it that way. Like, what makes you think of it that way? So, and I said, yeah, that's a, very inconsequential kind of thing. I was, oh, it's an enlightening moment for me to learn that anyone can have any drink thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great example, because I've been saying since I become a grandmother, my grandchildren, that they don't miss a thing. And I believe that that's kind of the case with most children, is they really are watching everything and believing what they see. And of course, at the time when you were growing up, and I was probably a teenager or in college then, but
I don't know.
but Diet Coke was
Yeah.
what I didn't drink anything but diet soda when I was in college. That's all I drank, because I thought that that's how I was going to lose some weight, because I had to be super duper skinny in the early 80s.
Right. And that another example of just these messages that we get, whether overtly or covertly, right? So and that's obviously a very simple, minor thing to change your opinion on. But yeah, over the years, I've been through a lot of very big, significant, difficult transformations. I was divorced when our son was really young. He was 13 months old. And, since then I've had a couple of long-term relationships that, ended and felt like divorce, so kind of going through those transitions are really difficult. I've had some, traumas and mental health issues in my family of origin, on both sides. I've had my own struggles with depression over the years with different things going on, legal battles and, conscious decisions about religion and spirituality based on, a disagreement with my ex about, him wanting our son to be raised in a particular church that I didn't align with anymore. We separated, and then plus career reinvention. I had gotten into financial services when I finished high school. I went to university for business, not because I had a special love for business. I just thought it was practical, and I wanted to learn. I didn't grow up with a lot of money, so I literally just wanted to figure out how to not be poor. That was my, I didn't want to struggle, but that's not where my heart was. And so over the years, I put myself into positions where, I left that field. I went, I worked in many different industries and different management and leadership roles for a landscaping company. I taught at the local college. I did roles in accounting and payroll and all kinds of different contracts. I did some television work, and slowly trying to get to the thing that was my thing, because I think all along trying to get to this authentic self that I felt like was in there somewhere, and really just had almost become estranged from her myself, and everyone, even very recently, still people identify with me as a certain, oh, Kelly, she's a real details person, she's real operationally strong. And yes, I am. Do I enjoy that? Not really. It's not my, am I seeking out roles that engage those things? No, that is not where my heart wants to be. And so going through those transformations, I've really over time come to learn just even how to even feel or recognize this internal kind of compass that we all have that's guiding us to the right thing. And also, going through changes, sometimes by choice and sometimes by someone else's choice, over time, I've learned how to develop the courage to make changes, because like I said earlier, even a change that it's your choice and that you want doesn't make it an easy choice. Sometimes the process of transformation and the process of changing into something different is really challenging and scary and difficult. And so yeah, I've kind of, it's not that I never struggle with any kind of fears or hard times going through challenges and transformations anymore, but I really have found some kind of, some metaphorical analogy type lessons that have helped me. And I'm really passionate about sharing that with others, because the thing that I can't stand most, one of the things I can't stand most in the world, is anyone feeling trapped, anyone feeling like they can't change, because sometimes it involves really hard decisions and a tricky phase. But if you have a little bit of guideline about how to go through it and how to be kind to yourself through each different phase, and when you understand what to expect and what's normal, it can just help everyone live a more like
Yeah,
peaceful life.
I love that. I had a conversation with my son last night, who is, and Jacob, sorry, but I'm bringing you in here. He's getting his EMT training certification, and
Okay.
he did a ride along the other day, and he was so frustrated with himself. It was the first time he's done a ride along, and he didn't know how to do certain things. He didn't have it memorized yet, and he kind of got chastised by one of the other people, and it was just humiliating for him. I could feel it in his voice, because he's a perfectionist, and he's an overachiever, and he's extremely intelligent, and when he does something, he does it really well. And but I said, Jake, I said, it's your first ride along. Like, you're not supposed to be perfect. Like, let that go. You're supposed to learn from your mistakes. That's how we learn. And that's why they're doing this with you. You're in training. So give yourself
Yes.
a break and love yourself for what you did right. Like, seriously. Then that's what you're saying, is like giving yourself that break as you're going through transformation is really key, and loving who you are as you're going through it, because we are hard on ourselves. I've been taught to be hard on myself since I was a child. I've taught myself to be hard on myself before somebody else could be, because I thought it would negate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I really think that's part of, like, even though North America in general is quite multicultural now, we all came here from somewhere originally, somewhere else. And the people that came across the ocean to, start, these nations, we're pioneering people, right? There's a spirit of, suck it up, buttercup,
That's right.
and get to work. And I think that's really ingrained in us in a way that we maybe don't think about often. But yeah, like having a framework, like you said, for going through, like stepping into these new roles, like your son is, or any other new role, whether it's personal or professional, and being kind to ourselves for sure is an important element. And then, but also knowing how to nurture each phase. And so maybe with that, that's actually a good sort of segue into those stages. And I often think that nature is a good teacher for us. And I often like to look to nature for, like, how does nature do it? How does that happen? Because we're part of nature. We're connected to the planet and to each other and to, the plants and the animals and everything. And I think there's some really good lessons in there for us. And the analogy that I use is, it's a little bit cliche, but when you dive into it, it's more than cliche. And it's the transformation of a butterfly, right? The stages that a butterfly goes through from when it comes out of the egg until it's a caterpillar at first. And that's when it's a larva. Most larvae are protected somewhere, but as an insect, as a butterfly, this caterpillar has to crawl around and make its way until it's time for it to transform. And the stages that a butterfly goes through are really very similar to the stages of any kind of change that we humans go through. And so just in a quick nutshell, the butterfly stages I'll talk about, and then for humans. So the butterfly, and part of this in an ideal world, as children, we'd all come out of the egg, the caterpillar actually like eats its way out of the egg, and then it literally just goes around and it eats and eats and eats and eats the things that it likes until it feels, time for a change. And many caterpillars like shed their skin a few times during that process. And in an ideal world, we'd all have wonderful childhoods like that, where we come out and we get to just explore and eat and sample all the things that we love, shed what we don't. No, I don't like that. I tried that sport. I don't like it. I tried this hobby. I didn't like it. In high school, we all do this. I remember when grade 9, I started, and I'm like, I wore all black and dark red lipstick because I was trying on that little, mode for size. And then by grade 10, I was like in the preppy stuff. And then, we all, try on these identities and kind of change through time. But then the caterpillar, at some point, it just gets this inclination that it's time to change. And what it does at that time, like, it looks around for a place, usually, and different butterflies, I learned this in looking this up, different butterflies have different plants, like different types of food they prefer. Like a monarch prefers milkweed, for example. So it will often lay down it's hold fast, it's called. They do this little sort of thread thing that they hang on to. They put their claspers in near a milkweed plant, and they go upside down and start to form like the next layer of skin, which is the chrysalis, it's called. And that is when, the hardest part of the transformation happens. And literally the digestive juices that the caterpillar used to digest its food with, those juices start to digest the caterpillar itself. Like, it literally turns into soup, like liquid that is not, it's not identifiable. And out of those cells, like out of what's in there, that little butterfly soup, there's just a handful of formative cells. They're called imaginal cells or imaginal buds that have the essence of what the butterfly is that's actually coming out in it. And that's the only part of the caterpillar that actually remains, if you will. And those are like the directive cells. It's almost like, I think of it like stem cells in humans that, they're kind of like the formative bits that a butterfly has that tell it what it's meant to be. And so it, goes through this soup stage, and it's in its chrysalis. And when it comes time, like when it starts to form, in there, it's forming the head and the wings and all the things. And eventually the chrysalis turns transparent, and the butterfly has to work its own way out of the chrysalis. It's detrimental to the butterfly if you help it out. If you ever happen to stumble across a butterfly coming out of its chrysalis, don't help it. Like, it needs that to help strengthen its wings, and it needs time then to just sit there, and it hangs upside down, and while the fluid starts to pump through its wings to give them some shape and form, and eventually it flies off, and it feasts on its favorite foods for the rest of its days. And so when I really look into that, like look at the actual process, I'm like, that is so helpful and so aligned with really, I think, what I have found to be some really good strategies and lessons for going through change as humans. So I'll pause there just for a breath. And I don't know if you've heard of that. Have you ever looked into butterfly metamorphosis yourself before?
I think I did, like in grade school. But it was fascinating as an adult to sit and as a coach to listen to that process, because it totally makes sense that this is what you're basing, or one of the systems in nature that you're basing your programs on. Yeah. It totally makes sense. And I forgot that it became a liquid. Like, there was nothing left of that caterpillar except for a few cells, really.
Yeah, gone. Like, all former semblance of a caterpillar does not look like a caterpillar when it's in that stage. So
it's so neat when we think about our authentic selves as those cells. Like, we're still us, but it's like our soul. It's like our soul remains. We're still us. We just might look different and act different.
Absolutely. And that we often do. We often look and act and feel very different, which certainly, a butterfly would do. And like, as humans, even though it's so similar, and like I said, in a perfect world, that'd be great if we all just came out and got to explore ourselves and just become a butterfly without going through that transformative stage. And some transformations are certainly faster, shorter, longer, easier than others. But, as adults, I think I don't really consider this one of the stages, but one of the things that puts us into the stage of transformation I group them into 3 categories of catalysts, I call them, like something that happens, an incident that incites this change. And catalysts can certainly feel cataclysmic sometimes, they can sometimes really rock our world. But those 3 categories I talk about are: an event can happen in our life, we can have an opportunity or a threat, and then there's growth. And so events typically come, and I use the 4 Ds as a little framework. So death, divorce, disease, or disaster, some other kind of disaster, but basically what categorizes as an event is something that happens to us. It's usually not something that we have a choice in. It's just an event that's put upon us and may send us into a transformation. Whereas an opportunity or a threat is something that's more presented to us, and maybe it's something we've sought out. Maybe we've been seeking out job opportunities or relationship opportunities, but something either presents itself to us. The element there is just that we have a choice, right? Or even if a threat presents itself to us, we have a choice in the matter of how we want to deal with that. And that may or may not have to go through transformation, but that's kind of the second way that we're nudged or shoved into transformational experiences. And then the third way is just growth, right? Just natural growth. I also think cyclically, like I would just really not enjoy a life where I get to some place and then I just sit and do the same thing for the whole rest of my life. Like I want to keep learning and growing and experiencing different things, and of course have the things you love, but there are times in life where we outgrow certain things, whether it's a job or relationship, friendship, and sometimes they just go through transformations themselves. But sometimes it sounds easy. It's like, oh, well, that's nice. You just grew out of that. And so you make a choice out of it, but it's also not necessarily an easy choice. Sometimes someone else's growth is what incites an event for someone else. Like I was at the receiving end of my divorce, right? So obviously, there was some working through things up to a certain point, but it was my ex who was the one who said, no, we're done. And so someone else's growth can be an event in your life, and vice versa. Your growth can become an event, an opportunity, or a threat in someone else's life. So it goes both ways, right? But it's one of those things that sort of is the catalyst to putting us into change. And the first stage, like the butterfly, when a caterpillar kind of gets to the stage, it was like, whoa, something feels like it's changing here. That's when the first stage is oftentimes one of the hardest. There's several hard stages, but it's the dissolving phase. So I'll name the 5 stages, and then we'll go through each of them. But first it dissolves, literally dissolves. Next is kind of, now I don't know if butterflies dream, but these imaginal buds, like these cells that are in there that form the foundation of the butterfly. I like even the word imaginal cells, because that's, in a human, the imagination time. That's the time for us to just dream and feel around in there to like what this new us might look like. So the second stage is dream there. Third one is to design. Now, in nature, like a caterpillar, just, it's the cells that are forming into the design of what this butterfly is going to look like. But for us, we have elements of choice and decisions to make about how we want to come out of this change into our new form, whatever that might be. And then that leads to the last 2 phases, which are to emerge. We have to come out of this phase of change, like the butterfly has to come out of its chrysalis. And then finally, which is not a final at all, is to explore. Mm-hmm. Now we still have to continue to explore this, butterfly comes out. Okay, now how am I going to take in the world? We come out of a transformation and we have to explore. What does this feel like? What does this look like? And you won't know until you come out of that. So those phases, like there's a certain dissolving that we each have to do. And sometimes it's, a complete dissolution and we literally feel like butterfly soup. And sometimes it's just certain elements of our life or ourself that we might be changing, and others will remain the same. It depends on the situation, but that can be, some of the hardest stuff. But the dreaming phase is really a time to not feel like you have to have it figured out, because you won't at this stage. And I think it's just knowing and allowing yourself, like first being kind to yourself, knowing that it takes some time to feel into who this new you is, whether that's, again, if you think of it in the context of a relationship change or a career change. Those are kind of the two main ones that I often deal with, that I'm often talking with people about, is to really allow yourself to feel into what would actually feel good here. And sometimes recognizing the things, even if there were good things about the thing that you've lost, or the thing that's been taken away from you, or that you're moving away from, even if there were good things there maybe explore things that could have been better, ways that you could have been better, ways that you would have liked to engage with that situation a little bit differently. And so just sort of dream in that stage and not expect yourself to have it figured out.
Let's talk a little bit about the dream stage, because I'm fascinated by all of this. I love all the D's in that. I love it. And then the two E's at the end. I love that there's continuity there and easy to remember and knowing what to expect. But in the dream stage, what I'm hearing you put out there, and what it's reminding me of, is the surrender and receive time. And I think of like prayer and meditation as surrender and receive.
Yes.
And the journaling, like figuring it out, like what might I have done differently, and all those things. And that's all part of really surrendering and then receiving, and whatever that looks like to us, and either in religion or how we think of spirituality, or just like our higher self, just surrendering what we believe. It's like letting go of beliefs, or letting go of identity.
Identity is huge. Identity is so huge. And that's actually like another piece of the work that I'm doing is how to get more easily into your new identity. But we really develop a sense of ourself in so much alignment with our relationships, or the work that we do, or the role that we do. If it's not paid work, as if you're a stay-at-home parent, you really identify with that. And so if any element of that changes, it does bring about this unsettling time. And so so I've got some steps to go through, that phase, and allow yourself to really try and feel into that higher part of yourself. Whatever I think of it as your higher self, or what your soul, your heart came here to experience, or what do you want to experience next? Because there's not just one thing, it's like, what's next for me? And that's the dreaming part.
I love this. So wonderful.
Yeah.
What a wonderful gift you are giving to those of us that are going through transformation. I'm going through one right now myself. So it's, and transformation isn't a change. And transformation, sometimes we think, especially if it's an event, we almost think of it, some of us that grew up in a Christian religion, as punishment, like we did something wrong, like we're not in alignment. But that's not necessarily true. I feel like you're saying, our higher self, our soul came here to experience things, and it might well be part of the journey that we were meant to be here for, and it's an opportunity for growth.
Absolutely. And it's interesting when you bring that up in terms of religion, because that's, I would say, in a lot of the Western religions, which are kind of the Abrahamic religion traditions, that's a common theme, is that you've done something wrong, because good deeds are rewarded, and evil deeds, bad deeds, or you'll be punished for that. But there's also similar parallel in Eastern traditions, right? Karma. That's the whole idea of karma, is primarily from Eastern traditions. So there is that thought, when something bad, something negative happens to us, that, oh, what did I do to deserve this? Or how did I get here? And I think taking the empowerment, and I've got 7 steps that I want to share with listeners to kind of contextualize this. But just instead of looking at it as from that perspective, what have I done wrong, or have I done something wrong in the past? That is not helpful. Like, just period, not helpful. And I'm sure you've experienced this too. For me, some of the things that are awful in the moment, I would not wish or choose certain things on anyone. Later, I can see how they served me in some way. Again, it may not be something that I would choose, but it's all in how we look at it. And so, yeah. So yeah, well, maybe we'll go through those 7
Please, yes,
to
tell us.
help us get through this butterfly soup transformation. When you're in butterfly soup, just remember a few things. So the first thing is to know your own power. So if you are in a situation where you're in that egg, or you're in this chrysalis, that whether you chose to get there or you kind of landed there inadvertently, if you're in a situation that you're really knowing is not right for you, that you do have the power sometimes to make a change. And oftentimes, yep, that's hard. But, Glennon Doyle is one of my favorite authors, and her podcast, We Can Do Hard Things. That is the truth. That is the truth. And you may have to make some hard choices, but you can do it with the right support. So we'll get to that as well. So the second thing to remember is to definitely learn from your experiences. In that dream time, in that butterfly total soup time, that's the time to explore, not from a critiquing perspective or like a self-deprecating perspective, like, what did I do wrong? But yeah, look at, what was my part in this? What was my part in this? How did I play a part in this happening? If it's something to that effect, if you've lost a job or something, I think it is very healthy, and it's wise to explore what's happened, but not to beat ourselves up for anything. It's got to come from a place of wanting to learn, and wanting to learn maybe different expectations you would have of other people. Well, I got into that relationship with this person who, I kind of realized, at some point that they were this or that doesn't really align. Okay, how do I make sure not to do that next time? And to just really, kind of ingest and sort of, I think of it as transmute that. Can you turn that into something productive and adaptive? Can you turn the things that maybe you would have liked to have done differently into a different experience next time? The third strategy that I think is helpful is to take in the things that you like. And this is both, just in life in general, but certainly when you're in a phase of major transformation, is to really spend some time feeling into, like, what does make you feel good in life? What does light you up? What kinds of things have you always thought about exploring? What type of relationship do you want to be in? Whatever the case may be, how do you want to feel in your life? And that's different for each of us, right? We all have unique preferences and inclinations. Some of us want to work with our hands. Some of us hate working with our hands, like want to do intellectual work or whatever, but following what you need and really kind of trying to tune in to those imaginal buds, tune into that essence that's in there, and figuring out what are the feelings that you want to bring into the next evolution of you.
I think that's powerful, to focus on feeling as the beginning, because then you work it backwards.
Yes.
Feeling is the end result. And if we start to feel a certain way, we create from that.
Absolutely. That is a huge tool I teach, and like some of the things that I like to use in the manifesting world is, it's all about how you feel. Because truthfully, there's a lot of different things that can make us feel just a general sense of peace or contentment or enjoyment. There's a lot of things so if you can really identify and literally practice that feeling, like, even if you don't know what the next thing is, and you often don't in that dream stage, like, I have no idea what this next stage is going to look like, but I know I want to feel like this, or if you lose a job unexpectedly, or if you're at the receiving end of a divorce and you're like, whoa, didn't see that coming, wasn't ready for that. That's where it's important to tune into the feelings.
Good. Keep going.
Yeah.
This is so good.
All right. Good, good. Number 4, know what you need. And that's the part of taking care of yourself. So the butterfly, clasps itself onto a plant that it really likes, and it puts itself in a protected state. So I think honoring and respecting that this isn't the time for major big decisions necessarily in your life. If you can avoid it, this is the time to just sort of take care of yourself. There's a balance, right? Like sometimes when you're really feeling like just crushed with things, the last thing you want to do is go out and socialize, but sometimes that's the best thing for you, right? And it's almost taking like a sort of parental role for ourselves where, hey sweetie, I know you don't feel like going out tonight, but I think, I really know that you probably feel better if you go see that girlfriend tonight. Yeah, you're right, I probably will. And you will make ourselves do things, but it's like putting yourself keep yourself safe as much as possible. If you have any kind of heads up about this, the change that's happening, try and set yourself up as best you can. If you feel like your company's, there's rumors of layoffs happening, maybe save a little bit more, maybe start to think about what you want to do next. Wherever possible, try and prepare yourself for the change, but take care of yourself during the process. And that includes being kind to yourself for sure. Number 5 is just fully allow the change. There are times when, we might want to fight against the change, and that can serve us. It's sort of knowing when to fight and when to concede. But when we resist the change, or we hang on, mostly with our thoughts, we hang on to ideas of what was, and we maybe over glorify the thing that is dissolving away because it's so unsettling to be in this unknown phase. I think sometimes we can have unhealthy attachments to what was old and safe just because that's safe and that's what our brains want. It's even, we want, what do they say? That the devil is better than the devil you don't know. That's just how our brains work. It's part of the human condition. So I think allowing the change and just knowing that it's normal for you to maybe not recognize yourself for a while. I don't know who this is I don't know what this is gonna look like.
So interesting that you're saying this, because this has been a subject that's been coming up lately in these interviews.
Oh.
It is that it's where we think is safe, the safety zone is not safe. It's not safe to stay the same. It's not safe there, although we've talked ourselves into it. And the past, like you said, that we've over glorified, possibly. We have these pictures of a relationship, for example, or a past relationship. And because of some trauma that happened to us, to make it break up, we want to fix it and we make it bigger than it was in our brains. And that is not a safe place to be. It is just not. So
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is that to learn to release expectations.
Yes.
And what I was saying earlier about the surrendering and then receiving, and then be open to receive the next best thing, the next thing that's coming, and allow it. Is that correct?
Yes. The only one modification I might offer is, and this is just semantics, but when you said the next best thing, it might not be next best in order of, it might be way better.
Way
It
better.
probably will be way better if you allow yourself,
Way better. I'm all
way
about
better.
that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And that's been my experience. And I've seen it so many times, people that have, been fired from jobs and it forced them down a different path, that they're like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so glad that happened to me. We've all heard lots of stories, I'm sure, at this point by that, but it is, yeah, our minds play a huge part in our experience of the transformation. And so that leads into number 6, which is like, trust the process. Trust the process, and know that even when you can't see what the end result will look like, if you allow yourself to really reflect in a adaptive, proactive, healthy way about what you can learn or what you can take away from the previous experience. And at the same time, really try and tune into, through journaling, through talking with a therapist or a coach or friend, about what you really want to feel in the next iteration of you. If you focus on the essence of what lights you up, how you want to feel, and on how can I transmute anything from the past into a new version in the future, trust that process. Because if you keep focused on the right things, you'll get there. And that's to the last point, number 7, which is to emerge when it's time, and knowing that sometimes that can be hard. Sometimes if you're coming out, and I'm experiencing this, I've experienced it in the past, when you're stepping into a new role, a new relationship, a new business, starting a new business, it's scary sometimes, but you can't stay in that chrysalis forever. You can't stay in there thinking and wondering and imagining and making stuff up, designing stuff up. You have to get out there and take some steps. And then it's a continuous exploration. But just know that, you should not, I hate saying should, but I highly recommend not trying to figure it all out before you come out of that chrysalis, before you go, okay, I'm ready to do the thing. You can't figure it out without actually doing it. So come on out when it's time, and know that you're still gonna, take a while to pump your wings up and, and get good at flying, and figure out which plants you like to stay the most time with. But come on out and keep exploring.
I love it. It's beautiful. And it just fits right in with my little story about my son on the ambulance ride. So it's just, yeah, I mean, that's how we get strong, and we learn what we're good at, and we learn if this is what we want. Maybe it's not. Maybe we're, it's time to go back in there again and redream. And that's okay, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I would encourage that, sometimes, because like I said, I really don't think that you can know fully how it's going to feel until you're in it. And so, and this is a silly example, but for a long time, I really wanted to take up pottery as a habit. The movie Ghost, everyone saw that movie, and I was like, oh, I want to take up pottery. It looks so, soothing. And even without Patrick Swayze in the picture. But then when I did it, it was so hard. I have zero natural talent for it. My instructor had to rescue every single thing I made. So even though I had this, I really feel like this would be, really soothing and calming and creative. Yeah, it just wasn't my medium. So you have to get out there and try new things and see how it feels in your heart, in your body.
Beautiful. I love it. Kelly, how do people reach you? I'm sure the listeners are going to want more of you and how you've developed this system, and more bringing nature into your change transformation.
Yeah, thank you. The best place to get a hold of me now or anytime is kellywagnerkw.com. I do have a new website that's under redesign right now, but that one's just that's there. That'll always be there, and it'll point to the new things once they're ready. So yeah, kellywagnerkw.com is the best place to find me.
I love that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly, for sharing your expertise, your system. I love the whole butterfly story, because now I feel like I'm a little bit smarter today. And I want to talk to you again. Will you come back sometime and interview again?
I'd love to. Thank you, Dawn. I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate you, giving me the opportunity to share this, and hopefully it's helpful for some folks out there.
It's my honor to have you. And all of you, thank you for showing up for Authentic Living with Dawn Jenyce. And you can reach Kelly at her website, kellywagnerkw.com. Under construction, she's redoing it, but she's there. And we will link her website below as well. So thank you all for showing up, and stay authentic.